This class is about drafting and cutting patterns and getting into the knack of learning how to make your own clothes. I know the previous classes kind of seemed aloof to that, but on the contrary, a lot of the stuff that we covered in the previous classes were necessary in order for you to begin to start making your own clothes. I had previously stated that a lot of the stuff that we do on our sewing machines is not always sufficient in finishing a garment the way you need it to be finished. So we covered hand sewing and different techniques in learning how to hem a garment, mend a tie, fix a tear in a skirt or something. All of this coming very necessary. And sometimes you just don't have the time to go get your sewing machine, or you're on the road and you just have to jump or run into Dollar Tree to get a sewing kit to fix something. These hand sewing techniques come in very, very handy. And in fact, a lot of the mending that I do for people are hand sewing techniques, because some things just cannot be done on a sewing machine. And in fact, stuff like ties, you cannot mend a tie on a sewing machine unless it's not like the professionally made ties that are done to exquisite taste, where it's handcrafted and not so much done in a factory or a sewing machine on a sewing machine. But a lot of times those things are handcrafted. Learning how to fix a hem. So understanding fabrics also, and understanding how they drop and how they frame your body and how they move, learning different types of different kinds of fabric, learning what is natural versus what is not natural, and how they kind of affect your body and your skin and all these things. So while they might not have gone directly into fabric making of your own clothes, they are very essential. And as I said, like for myself, being a seamstress for a long time, I always go back to hand sewing, because sometimes it's just not necessary to pull out a sewing machine. So in your spare time, I do recommend that you go to, if you haven't seen the previous videos, go to YouTube and check out some of the hand sewing techniques, check out some of the previous classes to kind of rebuild the foundation that you need in order for you to really do wonderful sewing. So as I said, we're going over drafting and cutting, making your first piece of clothing and what that's going to entail. All right, so one of the easiest ways that a person can learn to sew and to make garments for themselves is to make garments from stuff that you already have. And this is one of my go-to when it comes to making a dress, a skirt, because I already have clothing that fit and that drape and shape the way I want it to. So rather than go and try to make a garment from complete scratch, I just go for a t-shirt that fits. And as you see in the picture over here, I just lay it out. Follow the seams of the shirt. The seams are just where the two pieces of fabric are joined, and you just trace it out on you can use parchment, you can use even cardboard, you can use wax paper, you can pretty much use anything that's flexible that will last or won't crumble. I've used, there's this really thick industrial kind of, they're almost like Bounty, but they're not. They're like cloth-like, and I've used those in the past to drape my fabrics to cut pattern pieces, because they're sturdy. So you can literally use anything that you want that folds away nice and neat, and if you crumple it, it won't distort the shape of it too much. And all you do, like I said, you just outline the shape of the shirt or dress that you're trying to make, and you create your pattern pieces from that. Another way that you can do it, which is more difficult, which most people won't want to do, is if you take the garment apart. You have the seam ripper that I showed you last class that you just go through, remove the garment, different pieces, take away the seams, and you just lay it flat. And that way you can have, it's easier to do, but nobody wants to dismantle their favorite shirt or something that they actually like wearing. From this step over here, you can create literally any design, any shape that you want, because it's easy to be manipulated because it's on paper. So even though this shirt might have a straight sleeve, as you can see, you can manipulate it into a bell sleeve or a puff sleeve or a cap sleeve or a quarter sleeve. So it gives you that opportunity to manipulate it any way you want. The neckline, the fit, if you want it to be like a peplum top, you can go through and manipulate it. And this is why I like doing that, because one, it's easy, and it gives me free range to kind of design. So yes, so that's draping from fabric and draping your fabric from clothing that you already have. And people kind of call this cloning your clothes, which is pretty much the same thing. All right, so this technique is draping on yourself, which is not my favorite. It's actually probably my least favorite, but it's one of the most effective ones, but very necessary as well. And one of the reasons it's not my favorite is because it's extremely difficult, especially when you're trying to make adjustments to the back or, you know, places that you just cannot reach. If you do have someone that can help you, that is a lot better. But most times you're just trying to make a garment yourself, or the people around you, they themselves don't really know how to sew. So the first step in draping on yourself is to pin the garment inside out. And the reason why it's better to pin it inside out is that you're literally making the adjustments. You're pinning the fabric based on how it's going to look afterwards. When you pin it right sides out, it kind of takes up, in a sense, more fabric than needed. And, you know, pinning it inside out just makes it more accurate. Especially when you're pinning darts, or if you're trying to take in the waist, or even the armhole, because I've just been lazy at times and I didn't want to just turn it inside out and I just throw it on, or didn't want to just take it off and turn it inside out, and gone ahead and just use my finger and pinch. But I think you can do that over time of, you know, getting used to sewing and stuff like that, that you can do that. But my recommendation is that you pin the garment inside out. So second thing is to learn to, you know, drape fabric onto yourself. You're going to need the right equipment. The lady in the picture, she's using a tape measure, and tape measures are like a seamstress or a tailor's one of their main tools next to the scissors, because that is how you measure. That is how you determine length, height, width, you know, of the garment that you're using. And eyeballing doesn't necessarily work when you're trying to tailor something to your body. You're going to need the right pins. Honestly, pin size doesn't really matter, but if you like a longer pin, the 2-inch ones, 3-inch ones, the ones that have the little gems at the top, those are great too. But from my recommendation, I do suggest that you go for like 2-inch, at least 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches size pins. Why? Because they're easier to see and easier to manipulate and maneuver, because the small ones, which I like sometimes, you miss them when you're taking them off and you end up sticking yourself. So, and having them right next to where you are, because the last thing you want to do is trying to find stuff when you're trying to pin. So right equipment and posture. So posture is very, 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 very important when you're tailoring a garment to your body. If you're bending and slouching, you're basically, however you're standing is however the garment is going to be altered to your body. So if you're sitting down or slouching, when you tailor that garment and then you sew it and then you put it on, it's going to feel wonky when you're not standing up straight. So just make sure you're standing up right. And if you're hemming a garment, because this is something that I've noticed too, which was, you know, when I was first started sewing, when you're trying to adjust the hem, you have to place your hand on the fabric on your thigh to keep it in place, so that when you bend over to mark where you want the garment to be cut or hemmed, it tends to bend over with you. So you have to hold it in place with your hand so that when you bend over, it doesn't move. Or if you have little helpers around the house, such as children or husband, you can also feel free to use them. They'll be more than happy to help you. And another thing too is guessing and eyeballing. I think in one of the previous classes, I had mentioned that your fingers are an inches based from your knuckle. So from the first joint to your tip of your finger is 1 inch. And if you measure it, you'll see. So whenever I'm trying to just take an inch off a waist or an arm piece, I use my pointer, and because I know that from this end to this end is just 1 inch. So then I can eyeball and say, okay, I just need a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch or 2 inches. And I could just use that and my finger real quick, and I could just pin and I could just take it off, because I like to sew quickly and get everything done. Yeah, so you can just start eyeballing, guessing as to how much you want to take off. And last one on the suggestion, which is pin readjust 100 times if you need to do that. And it is going to be time consuming, but when you're done and the garment fits right, it's going to be completely worth it, because I've skipped the step where I just eyeball, I pin, and I sew, and I try it on. And I wished I had tried it on again before sewing it. So then now I'm going to have to undo the whole thing because I was being lazy and I didn't want to have to try it on and readjust and try it on and readjust. I just eyeball and sew. And sometimes I end up cutting the fabric before I try it on again, and I cut off too much. So pin, readjust, try it on, pin, readjust again 100 times if you need to make sure that you have the right measurements. All right, so this technique is one that I recently started doing because I invested into a dress form. I actually have 2 dress forms. In a recent, maybe under a year, even though I've been sewing for a long time, but I was doing the draping on myself technique, which worked for the most part. But I wanted to learn to make princess seams. And in order for me to do that, it's really, really hard to drape on yourself these kind of seams or these designs. And, you know, sometimes seeing how the fabric falls. So draping on a mannequin is another technique in how to create your patterns and learning how to sew. And draping is just smoothing, positioning, and pinning the fabric on a dress form to create a certain shape or design, right? So you're smoothing the fabric. It's like you have the fabric and you're smoothing it on over like this, the second image here, and you're just pinning away all the lumps, smoothing it out so that it fits onto the body nicely. And this is pretty much how they were able to create princess seams and different cuts and different necklines, design them on mannequins because they saw how the fabric was fitting on the body. When you're doing that on yourself, unless you're standing in front of a mirror, you don't necessarily can see that. So draping can be used to create basic patterns or organic designs by playing with the fabric on the form. Working directly with the fabric on the form, you can see the effect of every adjustment. This technique helps you to sew better based on body measurements. So this is one of my favorite techniques whenever I'm trying to design something that is different. And I've done something before and I'm like, okay, I want to be inspired. So I put it on my mannequin or my dress form, and I see how the fabric is draping. I see how the fabric is coming along. So I can see it on myself before I start sewing. And also it helps me to create and to be more creative and design something that's different. And why I would suggest that you do invest in a mannequin, it might be costly, but as I said, you can check Let Go, OfferUp. There's always somebody selling something that they don't need. And I paid $89 for my adjustable mannequin on Amazon. So you can find them on Amazon. And it sounds like a lot of money, but when you're seriously interested in sewing and making your garments, it's not that much. And the best thing with the adjustable mannequins is that you can tailor it to your size. So the small size, I believe, goes up to like a large. And then you have the large that goes up to like a 2X and different sizes. But you can adjust the shape based on your waist, your bust, your hip, your torso, like all of that you're able to do on a mannequin, so that now when you're starting to place the fabric and making your garments, you're pretty much making the garment on your body. And of course, these kind of mannequins, you can pad them if it's too small in the bust area, too flat in the butt, because some of us got curves. You can pad them, and you can you can tailor it to your body if it's still not good enough. There's plenty of videos on YouTube as to how you can tailor your mannequin, how you can adjust it to your body. And I've seen plenty of girls too make their dress forms using duct tape. And I don't know if you're familiar with paper mache, which is using torn up paper and glue and water and putting on something that's form-fitting, and you and your friends kind of go at it, laying the paper on and allowing it to dry, and cutting it off and stuffing it and taping it together and creating a custom fit dress form for your body. So this is one other way that you can go ahead and create your own, starting your own patterns and starting to sew. And as I said, I really, really love this technique because you get to see the fabric, the dress or the skirt or whatever you're making on something before it's finished. So you kind of have an idea of how it's going to look on you. All right, continuing. So another way that you can get patterns is, these are commercial patterns. Usually when you go into the sewing section at like Walmart, I'm not sure if Target and those places have it, or Joann's or Michael's, you can definitely find already put together patterns. You just scroll through and you pick a design that you like. So somebody somewhere has already done all the hard work for you. All you have to do is go and buy it. Some of them are affordable, and you can still go ahead and manipulate these. It's just done for you and you don't get to really choose much. But with time and patience, you can manipulate it as to how you want. There are different places, as I said, you can go and shop for your commercial patterns, Walmart, even in the sewing stores that sell fabrics and stuff that you can find. They usually have like a big section of patterns that you can shop through, skip through, and find nice designs. So if you don't know how to draft, you don't even need to know how to draft patterns. You can still be a seamstress because all of this is done for you. You just buy the commercial patterns, place it on your fabric, cut, and have the instructions to show you how to attach it. So this is so easy. And then you just make it and then you wear it and you're just like, yeah, I made this. And they're like, what? And they're thinking like you did all the hard work, getting your muslin, draping it on the fabric, doing all the stuff. And you're just like, laughing underneath like, nah, I actually, bought this commercial pattern, but they don't need to know that, right? So commercial patterns are one and done, and they're to do all the hard work for you. So now, if you do not have any questions, I'm going to open the floor up. We're going to go into our DIY, but